Okay, so are you ready to dive into something a little bit different today?
Always up for a challenge. What do we have?
Well, let's talk about the end of the world.
Oh, wow. Starting the day off light. Huh.
Well, not exactly full-on doomsday prepping, more like a thoughtful exploration of the possibilities. Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So we're going to be looking at this book, Psalms of Horror, and how the world could end tomorrow.
Catchy title.
Right, and the author is Traian Rareș Tuș. Now, here's the thing about this guy. He's not your typical doomsday prophet.
Okay. How so?
This guy has like multiple Olympic medals in physics and astrophysics.
Wow, so he's bringing some serious scientific cred to the table.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just like, some random person on the internet yelling about the apocalypse.
So he's approaching this from like a scientifically grounded perspective.
Yeah, and the cool thing is he does it with this kind of playful, almost humorous tone.
Right.
It's not all doom and gloom.
That's a nice change of pace for this kind of topic. I mean, it can get pretty heavy.
Oh, for sure. So basically, the book goes through all these different apocalyptic scenarios, asteroids, supervolcanoes, pandemics, the whole shebang.
Sounds comprehensive.
But then get this, he ranks them by how likely they are to actually happen based on, scientific evidence and stuff.
Okay, so he's not just throwing out scary possibilities. He's actually trying to assess the real risks.
Exactly. And to make things even more interesting, he breaks down these doomsday scenarios into 4 main categories.
4 categories. All right, you got my attention. Lay them on me.
So we've got universal deaths, ecological disasters, pandemic devastations, and then the self-destruction category.
Self-destruction. So, like, we're the cause of our own demise.
Sadly, yeah. That's a big part of his argument. That we're just as capable of ending the world as any natural disaster.
I mean, looking at history, can't say I'm surprised. But let's dive a bit deeper into these categories. What makes them distinct? And I guess, how does the author connect them?
Well, that's what I really wanted to get your take on because, you've spent years researching these kinds of things.
It's true. I find these existential threats fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. But Tuss really hits on something with these categories. It's not just about listing out ways the world could end. It's about understanding the complex web of factors that contribute to each scenario.
Okay, so it's not just like, oh, an asteroid hits and we're all toast. It's more nuanced than that.
Exactly. Take ecological disasters, for instance. He talks about things like climate change, resource depletion, and biodiversity loss. But he emphasizes how these issues are interconnected.
So one problem can actually make the others worse.
Precisely. Like, think about how deforestation can contribute to both climate change and habitat loss. It's this vicious cycle. And it's not just limited to ecological disasters. He argues that a pandemic, which he categorizes as a biological threat, could be made even worse by, say, climate change.
Wow, so it's like a domino effect. One catastrophe can trigger a whole chain reaction across different categories.
Yeah, it's a pretty sobering thought. But it's important to see these connections to understand the full scope of the risks we face.
All right, so ecological disasters, those are pretty straightforward to grasp. But what about this universal death category? What kind of stuff falls under that?
No, those are the really mind-bending scenarios. We're talking about events that could literally wipe out the entire universe, not just Earth.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
Well, one that Tuss explores is the idea of vacuum decay. It's a bit complex, but basically, it involves the fundamental fabric of reality becoming unstable and collapsing in on itself.
So, like, the universe just kind of implodes?
Essentially. And there's no escaping. That one, no bunkers, no spaceships, nothing.
That is pretty terrifying. I mean, it makes a giant asteroid seem almost manageable.
Right. But the good news, if you can call it that, is that these universal death scenarios are also the least likely to happen.
Okay, well, that's something. At
Yeah.
least we've got that going for us. So we've talked about ecological disasters and universal deaths. What about the self-destruction category? What are some of the ways Tuszak suggests we can end up being our own worst enemy?
Well, he covers a lot of ground there, from nuclear war to runaway artificial intelligence to even seemingly mundane things like unsustainable resource consumption. He argues that our drive to innovate and push boundaries, which is a hallmark of our species, can also be our downfall if we're not careful.
So it's like we're so focused on progress that we don't always stop to think about the potential consequences.
Exactly. And Tuss doesn't shy away from pointing out some of the ways we're already seeing this play out. Things like pollution, climate change, and political instability.
It's hard to argue with that. I mean, look at what's happening in the world right now. But in the book, does he offer any hope? Or is it just all doom and gloom?
You know what? I actually finished the book feeling a surprising sense of peace, not because I think we've dodged a bullet or anything, but because Tuss emphasizes the importance of understanding and accepting risk. By confronting these possibilities head-on, he argues we can free ourselves from the paralysis of fear and make more informed choices about how we live our lives.
So it's not about ignoring the potential for disaster, but rather using that knowledge to live more intentionally.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have a role to play in shaping our future, even in the face of overwhelming challenges.
I like that. It's empowering in a way. It's like, okay, the world might end, but I'm not going to just sit here and wait for it to happen. I'm going to do what I can to make a difference.
That's the spirit. And Tarians even suggests that this awareness of our own mortality can actually be a source of meaning and purpose. It can help us prioritize what truly matters and live more fulfilling lives.
All right, so to wrap things up, let's do a quick recap for our listeners.
Okay.
We've been talking about the 4 categories of apocalyptic scenarios outlined in Psalms of Horror by Traian Rareș Tuș. We've got universal deaths, those universe-ending events that are thankfully pretty unlikely.
Right. Then we have ecological disasters, which are a bit more pressing and involve things like climate change and resource depletion.
Then there are pandemic devastations, which we've unfortunately gotten a taste of in recent years. And finally, there's the self-destruction category, where we humans are the architects of our own downfall.
A sobering thought. But as we've discussed, it's not without a glimmer of hope. We have the power to change course, to innovate and create solutions, just as we've created problems.
So the takeaway here isn't to run for the hills and start hoarding canned goods. It's to be informed, to be engaged, and to make conscious choices about how we want to live our lives in light of these potential threats.
And to remember that even in the face of uncertainty, we still have agency. We can still make a difference.
So here's a final thought for all of you listening. Does knowing how the world could end change how you live your life today?
Something to ponder for sure.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
Until then, stay curious and stay safe.
Exactly. Stay safe out there.